Disco track is well known among many Thais for some time. It was mentioned in His Majesty's speech on the 4th of December 1992. Do you recall to what issues the disco track leads?
By the look of it, the road is no different from any other. But the sign Disco Track stands out to anyone who sees it, not because it bears something unusual, but the name refers to one of the roads to be kept in our memories because it relates to His Majesty the King.
It was an unpaved road, actually a path, passable to ox-drawn carts, with thick woods and overgrown vegetation on both sides. Even local people found it quite trying to go through there. The king described it as a rocky road, making you shake as if dancing in a discotheque. That was when the term came up, just as the king was travelling through. By the time he came back through, the path had been named.
The even paved road of today leaves no trace of its original condition when His Majesty travelled through in the night of the 25th of November 1992.
He told us upon arriving at the Khao Wong Widyakan school that looking down from the helicopter after circling the site for a while, he saw something which interested him very much, so he took a trip here to inspect.
Here, over here, this way down.
What Mrs. Piangsi was referring to is the way to Gudor Ken, close to Lower Lampayang Creek, the destination of His Majesty's marathon trip in those days. Close by was the impromptu guide's, Mrs. Piangsi's own tiny plot of land.
Here we are, my paddy field. The king came down this way too.
This rough path has changed somewhat in that it is less untidy now.
The road has changed. It used to be just a narrow path far down there.
Right next to Mrs. Piangsi's plot of land was the creek His Majesty saw from the helicopter.
Here, Gudor, the essence of this place.
At the time, no one would have thought the creek would become the source of so many stories being told even today.
Here, step over this fence, over toward the track. Are you coming?
That night of 14 years ago, nobody had thought this place would be in the route of His Majesty's visits. It was an impromptu visit, of course.
The path was far more untidy at the time he came here. He asked us how we would like to have water supply. My husband said yes. The king told us that's why he came. He walked down to here.
It would not be far-fetched to say that the 8-rai plot of land owned by Mrs. Piangsi serves as an inspiration to His Majesty's new theory approach, which he later initiated for farmers in Khao Wong District, Kalasin Province.
He grabbed a sheaf saying, "Oh, I see no grains on these stalks." That was how he put it. Why was there no grain? This is not edible. They are half-grain crops.
We really had no water at all. The creek dried up completely. Only rocks everywhere.
Despite long periods of absolutely no rain, coupled with sandy soil which barely holds water, it was astonishing to His Majesty that the rice plant was that hardy in its struggle for survival. This gave rise to his subsequent remark that only a little bit of help can mean a somewhat bigger gain. At least they can have enough to eat. Quite a large number of Thai farmers own less than 20 rai of land each. Their livelihood relies solely on Mother Nature's mercy. As a result, the yield from these small plots of land does not suffice to bring in an income to feed the family. How can the moderate-sized piece of land, the farmer's only capital asset, sufficiently nurture the owner's livelihood and at the same time secure him a virtual immunity against capricious natural forces?
That sheaf of undeveloped rice stalks inspired His Majesty to acquire some 10 rai of land in Khao Wang district and turn it into an experiment station to squarely resolve food scarcity among farmers. And it was there, in Khao Wang, that the term, the new theory, was created by His Majesty. Incidentally, my son, who was assistant village headman, heard at a meeting that a certain family had put up their land for sale at 4 to 5 million baht per plot. I told my son we were not going to sell our land. Instead, we would donate it to the king.
That was how this area became the first private-owned piece of land come experiment plot under the new theory scheme. In one of His Majesty's addresses, Mr. Kaikam's spirited voluntary act was commended as follows. And he did not even impose any condition. He did not say he would like this or that in return if the project proved successful. Nothing. All he specifically said was that the king was to use his land as he saw fit. It goes to show that even a country folk understands very well how to go about developing a nation.
After the land donation, His Majesty let me continue on with the farming for generations, but just do not sell it, he told me.
Ever since then, Mr. Kaikam has put the new theory into practice. An exemplary farmer, he continues to enjoy full revenue from what his land, His Majesty's land, has yielded.
An industrious person never starves, was what the king said, and it was verifiably true too.
Looking back now at the period starting from 1989 at a place near Wat Mongkon Chai Patana in Saraburi province, His Majesty spent a certain amount of money from his own personal fund to acquire a piece of land and set up a development service centre for experimentations and studies on an agricultural development model.
His Majesty's objective was to establish by experimentation whether it would be feasible to develop a plot of land owned by an average farmer's household, say 10 to 20 rai, through integrated agriculture, which should help make farmers become self-supporting the whole year through, and possibly even have an excess of produce to be sold. At that early stage, His Majesty had not called it the new theory yet.
The new theory proposes a guideline for land management on a moderate size of plot, around 10 to 15 rai, to ensure sufficient food all year round. The difficulty of such land management system lies mainly in the ways and means to divide the plot of land according to purposes of utilization. The solution has been found in His Majesty's theory, gives priority to water resources for farming as the key issue. By this theory, the 15 rai experiment plot of land was divided into 4 sections, whereby a plot of 5 rai was set aside for rice cultivation, 5 rai for multiple crop cultivation, 3 rai for a farm pond, and the remaining 2 rai for accommodation and other activities. Starvation is the primary indication of poverty. For a Thai to be starved means not having enough rice to eat. To own land for rice cultivation, therefore, constitutes a fundamental security against starvation. According to His Majesty's calculations, the 5 rai plot of land is capable of producing rice for year-round consumption of a family of 5 to 6 members. The further 5 rai of land set aside for multiple crops cultivation to produce food for household consumption. It also ensures sufficient income for the living earned through the sale of surplus produce. Implementation of the integrated farming theory can be designed taking into consideration the terrain, the size of water supply, and the crop species befitting their locality. Mr. Plien Wongchai, a Muno farmer from Takbai district, Narathiwat province, applied His Majesty's new theory to his multi-crops farms. These include organic gardening, whereby produce is consumed at home as well as marketed for additional income.
It required some thinking too. My own thinking, that is. For example, what to plant today, what to sell at the marketplace. We have to study the market, right? We have to pay special attention to the market demand and concentrate on it. My produce is even exported to Malaysia. That hauled in an income of 35 baht a kilo.
Cloudy skies normally promise rainfall, a source of life for vegetations and creatures alike. However, given the fact that the rainy season only lasts a few months, coupled with the unpredictable changes in climate pattern, the skies with no rain clouds can also bring on starvation and famine. Thus, those whose living relies on water must reserve water to ensure sufficient supply. At the New Theory experiment station, 30% of land is set aside for rainwater storage. A new experiment went underway when His Majesty used his personal fund to acquire an additional plot of land. This time the experiment is focused on pond digging. It was His Majesty's initiation to set aside rich topsoil for cultivation at the first phase. Then the soil obtained from deeper digging should be used as filling material on paths around the house to raise the beds of crops or for irrigation purposes, which proved very useful in low-lying, marshy areas prone to flooding. At the final stage is to spread the topsoil being set aside in the first phase over areas to be cultivated. Water being stored in the farm pond is designed as a reserve for consumption only in times of drought or after long intervals between rains. Nevertheless, utilization of reserved water can be increased through fish raising or water plant growing for food by digging two separate ponds, since a pond to raise fish requires a different technique.
A pond that contains steep sides is not suitable as the fish have to swim all night in such a pond. No spot to rest. For tapion and nil fishes, there must be a slope around the edge of the pond for them to nestle in, while some other fishes nestle in a hole, especially to lay their eggs. A pond with steep sides causes the fish to have stiff necks because of the swim round the clock and no time to rest.
To suit the locality, some farm ponds can lie between raised beds of crops or even right in the middle of paddy field. The main idea is to store water for use in the dry season. Given the large number of farmers who opt for digging ponds to restore water for their farming, it turned out that these farm ponds serve as replacements for the natural waterways that dried up or were filled up earlier. At the same time, the hardship after flooding can, to a certain extent, be eased, as farmers have plenty of water stored in their individual ponds, which can be used to rescue their crops later. It is the very object of the new theory. The hard fact is that in a country like this country, water is plentiful or even excessive at some periods that it sometimes creates floods that brings miseries, destroys the cultivated plants, causing them to die and rot. After that, after all that water is drained out at the cost of great efforts and expenses, drought will set in, so no cultivation is possible. Then famine and poverty will prevail. A great deal of problems at the fledgling stage of the new theory lies in the pond digging phase because it is cost intensive, while topsoil has to be reserved. Otherwise, it will be lost at the plot of land is filled. For this reason, assistance has to come in from the government sector. Mr. Tawi Praha, formerly a wage earner in Bangkok, is among those receiving help from the government sector.
Before that, I used to get hired hands to help me carry blocks of soil to build my own weir. That was in 87, 88, 89. We worked the whole night through. People said I must be crazy.
With determination and perseverance on his part, the money invested by the government sector at that time did bear fruit. The profit gained is evident in the upgraded quality of life for the farmer and his family. It is partly true to what His Majesty once said, "Our loss is our gain."
It's far better than money, which can be exhausted. What he gave us is perfect. I know I will never be poor again. You should come back sometime next month. Here, where we just removed topsoil, I will grow straw mushroom and also make compost.
In calculating the appropriate dimensions of the pond to store rainwater, a few variables will have to be taken into consideration. Each plot of land differs in terms of the climate and the terrain.
Suppose you live in Nonthaburi. 10% for farm pond will suffice because there's plenty of water in Nonthaburi and you can set aside more space for cultivation. That, in turn, will generate higher income. But if you live in Pimai and your farms are based on the new theory concept, even 30% will not be enough. The whole of the northeast is arid. The period of zero rainfall can last up to 6 or 7 months, so you'd better set aside 40 to 50%.
Given decades of work experience, His Majesty is well aware of the fact that in some instances the period of zero rainfall can last longer than a year. To have a farm pond in their own plot of land does not ensure a risk-free resolution. The comprehensive royal-initiated new theory, therefore, calls for at least 2 larger-sized water resources, which will feed the small-sized farm pond. Water for farming based on the new theory approached on 4,600 rai plot of land in Khao Wong Kalasin is supplied by Upper Lam Payang Reservoir under a royal-initiated project. With the expansion of cultivation, His Majesty initiated a project to deliver excess water from Huai Pai Reservoir in Mukdahan, which had not been fully utilised, to cultivate a 12,000 rai plot of land more in Kalasin. According to His Majesty's initiation, the reservoir was able to feed farm pond through a pipeline system with a control device to regulate water right at the pond itself. To facilitate cultivation in the vicinity of Wat Mongkon, Chai Patana, Saraburi Province, His Majesty initiated a project to build the medium-sized Huai Hin Khao Reservoir to feed farm ponds in the area, while Huai Hin Khao Reservoir is fed in turn by a large reservoir at the Ba Sak Jolasid Dam. The project thus provides a double immunity system. Water supply from Huai Hin Khao Reservoir to feed farm ponds was enabled through water delivery pipelines, which has been laid underground.
Suppose an irrigation canal were to pass through your plot of land. It would cover roughly 1/3 of your land. You would earn no profits, having only the remaining 2/3. But if you owned a 20 rai plot of land, you wouldn't be much disturbed. His Majesty's initiation has sidestepped these issues completely. With the water pipelines in the ground, the problems no longer existed.
Although the theory of pond digging between rows of crop has long been the common practice, the new theory was formulated out of His Majesty's calculations, which took into account the size of water supply for each crop, the rate of evaporation, which should be corresponding to that of water to be replenished by medium and large-sized reservoirs. On the average, the required storage capacity for off-season cultivation is 1,000 cubic meters per rai. Statistics showed that water stored in a farm pond 4 meters deep on a 3 rai plot of land evaporates at the average rate of 1 centimeter per day. Thus, given a 300-day period of zero rainfall in a year, the water level in the pond will drop by 3 meters. What would be the most effective way to prevent as much evaporation as possible?
The calculations involved the appropriate depth of a pond. Besides, His Majesty took into account also the rate of daily evaporation, how it was accelerated with strong winds. Trees were to be planted all round the pond to decelerate evaporation as well as give it shade from the sun. Water plants were also to be grown there, also as a means to prevent evaporation. His Majesty always concentrated on maximum use of the water.
Fundamentals to the royal-initiated new theory were derived from His Majesty's development work, whereby complex mathematic and scientific calculations were made and then transformed into guidelines, phrased in practical terms to enhance farmers' easy understanding.
I heard His Majesty saying that the new theory was possible on a 15 rai plot of land. I constantly watched TV. That was how I came to know the ratio to use was 30, 30, 30, 10. I started right away by putting up my land plan for the experiment. They invested the funds. I did the work.
Agriculture based on the new theory was experimented on that 15-rai plot of land, rice cultivation on a 5-rai plot, cultivation of other crops on the next 5-rai plot. Farm pond occupied a further space of 3-rai. Then there was 2-rai left for housing, road, walkway and other supplementary activities. Livestock can be kept here for food or as a source of labour. For optimum results, the livestock to be kept should be the kinds that feed on produce from the farm so as to avoid additional expenses. Simultaneously, livestock manure serves as a source of natural fertilizer for the cultivation or can even be fed to fish and other aquatic creatures being raised in the farm pond.
Farmers can also reduce cost of production by feeding their fish with termites or garden snails. Fish grow to the desired size in 3 months. Suppose you have 600 in a pond. You can preserve 300 by putting them in an earthenware jar and ferment them.
Vegetable patches can be put along the hedge or in a small plot of land for the family consumption.
Most of us farmers are over-anxious. I used to be one of them. I could not wait to get my hands on what I wanted. But on second thought, it is better to relax and take things as they come. Growing trees and the like is no different from raising a child.
His Majesty's new theory was initiated as a practical guideline for poor farmers who own moderate pieces of land. It entails proper management or restricted resources so as to help them survive and effectively counter the prime cause of their hardship, starvation. 2 factors are essential. 1, to grow rice for the farmer's own consumption, and 2, to have enough storage of rainwater. They are the factors that differentiate the new theory from the conventional integrated agriculture.
It is hard if you look to gain profit in the thousands and millions, but if you just hope for a few thousands or tens of thousands, that is a sure thing. With sufficiency economy, there will be no more starvation.
Admittedly, the new theory is based on a simple line of thinking, aiming mainly at self-reliance on the part of farmers and a surplus of produce for sale. Nevertheless, a closer review of the approach reveals that the theory is a science of survival, as well as a work of art on the land. With accumulated experience and skill, farmers learn to formulate their own idea of how to variably put their land to optimal use. Mr. Kien Si-san used to be one of those slash-and-burn farmers. But when the Royal-initiated Upper Huai-Bang-Sai Basin Development Project was implemented under the new theory approach, he voluntarily joined up, trusting that his slash-and-burn farming would terminate. His decision has in turn proved beneficial to natural forest.
His Excellency General Prem once said, "If farming was a failure, people living close to the hilly area would exploit the forest, felling trees and selling logs to earn their living, or else they would have to send their offsprings off to work as wage earners in Bangkok. Thus, rice represents stability of the country."
The effect of living a well-balanced, self-sufficient life can be felt not only in matters concerning the struggle to have enough to survive, even lifestyles seem to undergo changes.
In comparison and in the context of life up country, those who find a job in Bangkok can be regarded as rich. I used to work as a coolie there. One must not be tired. If you got caught with it, you would be fired. People keep coming nowadays. On the 23rd, guests from Uganda, Lesotho, Swaziland are scheduled to observe the new theory project for implementation in their home countries.
Rice used to be cultivated solely for commercial purpose. Farmers came into contact with their land only at the transplanting and harvesting stages. Thus, the burden of nurturing the crop was left to Mother Nature and chemical fertilizers. But the Royal-initiated new theory compels a close bond between farmers and their crops, livestock and animals being kept and raised on the farm. Anxiety over the price of rice around the end of the year has vanished. Now, the green leaves in the paddy fields confirm in effect that the family will survive all through the next year. A wide variety of plants and vegetables ensures produce to feed the family and can become a source of supplementary income. Fruit trees planted around the farm pond provide food while they provide some shade from the bright sun during the dry season, thereby slowing the evaporation process. Such is the new life on the plot of land surrounded by a pervading sense of mutual giving and inter-alliance. It is a new form of living which projects sustained happiness, a royal gift from the Lord of the land to his impoverished subjects.
Yes, I am happy indeed. I come out here to lie down and listen to the birds chirping away. That delights me. Without all this, it would be just flat and bare everywhere. Then there would be nothing, no sound to attract me. I feel content because we are not going to starve. We have fish, we have rice in the field.
อิ่มใจครับ อิ่มใจผมว่าไม่อดกินไม่อดไม่อยากปลาก็ไม่อดนาก็มีข้าว
We can get by, even with no money at all. No chance that we will starve to death. We follow the king's new theory. We have a supply of fish, rice, and organic grown vegetables that are safe for consumption.
Being rid of all worries because they are self-supporting now, many farmers become knowledgeable in marketing strategy, how to properly deal with their surplus farm produce, joining efforts with their fellow villagers, etc. In due time, a sense of unity naturally developed among farmers under the new theory scheme.
The essential part is the approach, which is time-consuming. You should experiment on a small scheme first. In the end, you can be involved in a variety of things, but make sure there is a variety. Make a decision on which items are to be sold today, tomorrow, the next day. That way, you can survive.
Suppose you raise frogs. If you sell them at the time when there are plenty of them in the fields, you will not be able to sell at a good price. But if you have planning and sell them in the cold season, then you get a fantastic price. 100 baht a kilo, I tell you.
With the economic growth, perhaps factories would be built in the neighborhood. Then, farmers could diversify their crops to include perennial trees to feed the industry. That is one possibility. They can join together in the form of cooperative instead of dealing individually.
ร่วมทุนกันขายก็ไปขายรวมกันที่สหกรณ์แทนที่จะขายเอง
All things considered, one comes to the conclusion that the new theory is not a panacea for all ills at all localities. The application of the new theory is not simple. Its success is contingent on the location, the time, and the available budget. The reason is that the new theory is now widely known among the people at large. Everyone wants assistance from the government sector, for example, for pond digging. In some places, a pond is dug, but there is no water. In other places, rainwater leaks or water supply is not feasible. Thus, the implementation of the new theory requires a suitable place. Successful farmers are mostly having a different lifestyle and self-development. They have a chance to do more thinking on their own. How best to develop the land, what additional crops to be started next month, next year, the nature of the market for their surplus produce, etc. Hands-on classrooms offering knowledgeable such subjects as geography, mathematics, agriculture, economics and liberal arts can be attended daily right on their plots of land.
If you adopt the new theory, you survive. It certifies besides clean and safe food. Farmers enjoy good health. The family members live together. All this constitutes national security. Sufficiency economy means national security. We learn from His Majesty's speech of the 4th of December 1994 that the Royal Initiated New Theory consists of 3 phases, each providing a gradually stronger immune system for those who put the theory into practice.
As of today, the Cooperative Community Project, under the directorship of Pra Rajapi Patanatorn, is one of the fully integrated Royal Initiated New Theory projects in existence. All 3 phases have been integrated. During the past few years, the number of villagers in the vicinity of Khao Wong District, Kalasin Province, who relocated or worked in large cities seemed to be smaller. Ponds and crops were springing up visibly on small plots, thus binding the farmers to the land of works all year round. Faith and trust in the monk, their local leader, provided the catalyst to the coming together of a group of farmers in Kongchai sub-district of Kalasin to form the Tawon Patana agricultural cooperatives. At the time of selling, produce from the various paddy fields became one crop as a means to hedge against underpricing.
Brainstorming and joint trading mean positive outcome as they are the key to increase the farmers' bargaining power. Disastrous it would be if they tried to do it individually. That's why the cooperative system in our country needs to be reviewed and revived. Without this, the country would head for hardship. In the past, we went our separate ways. Each selected a place to his liking, and away he went, like a street vendor. Of course, we were treated too unjustly then.
Rice containing higher than 14.1% moisture is sold through the co-op channel to general buyers, whereas rice with up to 14% moisture will be processed at the royal-sponsored mill, which was built and equipped with machine financed by His Majesty's own private fund.
They might get a higher price somewhere else, but might also be cheated at the weighing machine. Even though the price offered here is a bit lower, one can be sure that our scale has never been tampered with.
The royal-sponsored rice mill is presently equipped with a grain sorting machine controlled by the microprocessor to detect contaminants, as well as off-coloured grains. What remains is prime quality rice sought after by both domestic and foreign consumers.
Larger-sized enterprises, like rice mill and passion fruit juice cannery, have to rely on government budget or financial support from the office of the RDPB. After the royal-sponsored rice mill, there are other rice mills and large-sized enterprises.
Operations of one of the most modern rice mills in Thailand are progressing side by side with the effort to conserve conventional rice farming under the Organic Farming Project. The Cattle Bank for Agricultural Purposes, which gives out loans of cattle to farmers, consists of two projects. One, the Royal-initiated Cattle Bank Project Farmers, under the auspices of the Department of Livestock, and two, the Cattle Bank Co-op Community. The latter gets its supply of cattle by redeeming them from the slaughterhouse.
The cattle are loaned to farmers free of charge, on condition that the bank takes possession of the first calf that is born so that it can be loaned to the next borrower. The farmers can, however, keep all other calves as well as the cow.
Needy farmers have water buffaloes as their source of manual labour, which partially help cut production costs. Moreover, the manure can be used as fertiliser, another way to cut costs.
This here is Toto, the male breeder. People in the neighbourhood bring their cows for breeding here. We raise the cattle when they are alive, bury them when they die. That's what we do. The venerable monk says we are not to distribute or process, only bury.
The prohibition against the killing of these breeder bulls and cows is in itself a religious precept. Reward him who has done you a favour. That is intrinsic in the development concept. By location, the area is fit mainly for rice cultivation. Thus, community activities are often rice-orientated. However, female farming villages in particular are capable of other supplementary occupations in the context of the cooperative system. These co-ops are not profit-orientated. Their remarkable success is based on the self-help development, whereby external assistance is sought by necessity, rationale and priority. An annually increasing number of members testify their success.
Starting capital worth only 10,400 baht. Today, to over 1,900,000 baht. We've got excellent cooperation from all members.
Simultaneous with economic development, foundation for a strong community on the path to sustained development has been laid through small communities within the cooperative community scheme. There are presently 13 co-op communities nationwide. The characteristics and distinctions vary according to the local conditions, as well as sociological environment. From self-supporting households, the people have come together to form an ever larger group within a cooperative community that proves socially as well as basic economically strong. In fact, strong enough to eventually seek external ventures through cooperations with other social groups. It is how a strong community takes shape and the very embodiment of unity mentioned on many occasions in His Majesty's speeches.
It was all formulated after His Majesty's long years of experience. After all, the new theory concept was first referred to some time after His Majesty turned 60. In the context of civil service, that would be the age after retirement. They were virtually His Majesty's lifelong experience because they had been gathered in all the years he worked.
The interrelated three-phase new theory and the three-levelled water resources development are but one example of an impressive array of agricultural development methods His Majesty has initiated. A local development project that is suitable to the prevailing local conditions can benefit a larger area. When this happens, one can expect growth and prosperity finally spreading from larger areas to all parts of the country. But to achieve this, there must be good cooperation between all parties concerned, academicians as well as the government sector. That is why I always say sufficiency economy and the new theory are the key components of the growth of the country, provided that people learn the virtues of perseverance, endurance, patience, not talking too much and not being engaged in disputes.
That was the new theory, which His Majesty the King initiated for his farming subjects, especially those impoverished ones. It is evident that the living standards of the farmers who came to adopt the new theory are not destined to remain the same forever. Whether the quality of life will be upgraded for them is contingent on a steady foundation which will enhance sustained progress.